Before we start, Justin, you want to say a prayer?
Yeah, sure will. Y'all bow with me. Most gracious and heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this day you've given us, Lord. Thank you for life's many blessings, Lord. We ask that you be with this fiscal court as we go through today's business. Lead, guide, and direct us in all that we do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead and call Marshall County Fiscal Court to order, February 5th, 2018. Guest, John Keith Miller is here. I see him over there. Good morning, sir. You want to come on up? And
All right. Thank you, Judge.
Good morning.
Members of the court,
Good morning.
thank you for allowing me this opportunity to come before you today. I'm the supervisor at the recycling center over on at the refuse on the main transfer site out on Benton-Bryansburg Road. Our mission is to provide our citizens with easily accessible recycling options throughout the county. We have collection containers at every transfer station, and there's even a recycling trailer at the Marshall County Library at the Benton location. And we have cardboard collection pens at businesses throughout the county. We also provide paper recycling to local schools and businesses. And to be able to provide these services, the center has heavily relied on grants through the state's Pride Fund. We've received several of these grants, and we've just recently received another one. And with this one, we are going to be able to purchase a new horizontal baler. Now, this baler is not going to be able to fit in our existing building, sorry. Oh, okay. It's not going to be able to fit in our current building, and our grants don't allow us to purchase anything for new building and labor costs. So I'm coming before you today asking for permission to use the special projects crew to be able to help us design and construct the addition to our present facility. It's going to be directly next to our current facility, and they were actually the ones who helped us with the construction of the original facility. So I think that they would be the most knowledgeable in how to construct this. The cost of the building will be paid for through the funds of the refuse district. We are just asking for help with the 4 crew members and the supervisor for that. We're also going to need help from the Marshall County Road Department because we need some dense grade to be able to build up and level the current area where this new building is going to be put so we can lay the concrete pad for it.
Is the grant, is that for the county's participation, is that in kind? Was that
This will go
requested?
towards the in-kind. The use of the special project group, and I believe if it takes like it did the last one that they helped us build a few years back, we are looking at about a 2-week project, which would probably equal about 80 hours per member, and then we can take all of that to use towards the in-kind along with the cost of the materials needed for the building.
Do you know what your total was on the grant as far as the in-kind by any chance?
The in-kind, yes, we're going to need 25% of our total, which altogether, and I don't have that number here in front of me, it was over $200,000. So that is not only for that baler, we also have recycling containers that we have set, drop-offs that we have at each of our stations now.
The in-kind is over 200,000?
No. That was the grant total.
Gotcha.
So it would
Okay.
be, right, the 25 match of that. And this would definitely, having that crew plus, the cost of the building materials would definitely help cover that in-kind.
When are y'all when are you looking to start the project?
Well, I would say when the weather got nice, it's starting to get nice now, but you don't know what to expect. So I'm going to shoot for the end of March or the 1st of April. And like I said, it may not take the full 2 weeks, but that's just my estimation on how much of their help we're going to need.
Is the baler paper products or what is it?
This is going to be for our plastic. At the moment, we have 2 of these horizontal balers and 1 vertical. The vertical one we use for the shredded paper. The other horizontal we use for newspaper. And then 1 horizontal we have to use for cardboard. Now, cardboard is our main draw. But when we have plastic come in, we have to stop our cardboard collection and baling so we can clean it out and just do plastic. With this new container, this new building, and this new baler, we're going to be able to start doing plastic only in that baler, which will make things a lot more streamlined. It'll also provide us with some storage space at this new building, which is something that we've desperately been needing out at our facility.
The new collection containers look awesome.
Well,
Also,
thank you.
Transfer
thank
station.
You. I think the wrap they did on them was excellent.
So you would actually need 50,000, is that right then, in kind from the county?
That's what we need, but I'm also using my own personal workers towards that goal.
That
the
goes
cost
towards
of
that.
We also purchased some scales. We've laid concrete pad for that as well. That cost has gone towards it. So far, I think we've put nearly $12,000 to $13,000 towards in kind. That's up until we've had our second quarterly information done on it, and I believe that's what it equaled up to. So we're just needing, once we do this building, the cost of the materials and the labor together, I think, are definitely going to push us over the top for our grant match. We've never had any trouble in the past with other grants that we've got meeting our match. So.
Okay. So ours at, no, that's just the maintenance crew at 80 hours per member is 12,600. What, the road department, what were you needing from the road department?
I'm not exactly how much dense grade we're going to need, but I would say I need probably, we would just estimate 4 hours to have a.
Do you know what size the building's going to be?
Yes, it's going to be 30 by 60. So.
It depends on the location. We just have to look and see. I mean, we may be able to use some red gravel also. It's cheaper than the dense grade.
Okay.
So y'all are paying the material, you just need us to, the labor.
That's correct.
Jason, do we need, I know we're trying to stay within the interlocal agreement, but do we need on a grant with matching? Is there anything that we need as far as documents to show our portion?
As far as the grant, I don't know, that would be grant specific. I'm not sure what they might, are they requiring, do they need anything from the fiscal court paperwork wise?
No, everything that, as long as I can show it on my grant expenditures, they don't require any kind of extra proof, you know, as long as I show that I give the names of the workers and their hourly wages.
And this is a state grant.
This is a state grant, yes.
Is there any other questions from the court? If we don't need, I know we try to stay in line with interlocal agreements. If we don't need that, the in-kind for the grant, our portion with maintenance crew would be about 12,600 towards your in-kind.
That would be very significant, yes, thank you.
And 4 hours.
It'll take longer than 4 hours to haul that much
Okay.
material.
Okay. Grant has been requested, it's been approved, and,
We've already received the grant. This grant is actually for 2018 through 2019.
okay.
So, yes, we have the baler has actually been pre-ordered. It's one of those things that has just a long lead time on it. It will not be ready until the end of May. We have till the 1st of July to close out our grant. That's why I said if we could start in April, that would give us enough time to get the building up and have it ready when the baler arrives.
Okay. To provide a portion of the match, we would need a motion if that's what the court wishes to do.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so
sir.
much.
Thank you.
Next on their guest, Chad McCann from Rivercrest. Morning, sir.
Morning. Here to present a status report, excuse me, and just the information on the most current drawdown request number 6 for the sewer expansion project here in Draftonville. You can see the numbers there in front of you for this pay period, month of January. The drawdown request from MERCO for the pay request for the sewer expansion work, $214,137.79. And then you can see you've got the copies of the engineering invoicing in there as well for the administration and the engineering and inspection on the project. Excuse me. Currently on the project, the contractors are working over there behind the school, trying to get finished up on that leg from behind the school up to Highway 68, and then they'll be moving back over to, you'll see them more visual along Highway 641 to complete that leg of the project, and then finish up at the lift station site right down there by the creek along 641 before you head south towards Bryansburg Road. But everything's moving along very well. As far as status on the project, we estimate as of the 25th of January, this pay request, contractor's approximately 65% complete. That may not sound like a huge jump from the last time that I came and spoke to y'all. Obviously, there has been some weather. Contractors continue to work. I will give them that. They've been staffing the job. I think they took off one day last week when we had the severe cold, but they made it up on Friday, working through. So they're still continuing to make progress on the project. Pipes going in the ground, and things moving forward. I don't see any issues right now with the contract time. Feels like everything's still on schedule to meet their mid-April end date with the current scope of work that they've got under contract right now.
Okay. If there's no questions on the drawdown, we would need a motion to approve.
So moved, Judge.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I know if we've got, while you're there, Chad, we've got some
All right.
other items.
Down there on new business.
New business. We can
Yes,
just go
sir.
ahead and jump into that while you're
All right.
here. Number A, change order, contingency dollars for Draftonville sewer expansion.
As of this time, current with this draw request that we're making, the existing loan that was requested and approved by KIA for $3,066,988, we've got $530,500 in contingency dollars in that project at this time. And 65% complete in the project, looking at items left to be completed, it doesn't look like those dollars are going to be used up with the current scope of work in the construction project. We like to be conservative and hold a little bit back, but we feel like that number is very sufficient, and we feel very confident in telling y'all that there's going to be north of $500,000 left in that loan that has been approved once the current scope work has been completed. Based on current meetings that we've had and some discussions with the sanitation district, that we've identified 2 projects that you'll see there, 2 extensions south of the current project area. One of them going south immediately from the lift station there on Highway 641 towards the trailer park that's right there on the west side of the road. There's an existing package treatment plant over there that has well, I haven't visually looked at the records on it, but I understand it's aged and probably very close, if not already, to the end of its design life. There's a potential for a significant number of customers to be absorbed by the district with this short extension. You can see on your notes there, 1,350 feet approximately to get from the lift station up there, and then also would potentially serve that other development there that would be going through along Sycamore Creek properties in the future, at some point in time there. So it's a recommended alternative for the use of those contingency dollars, and it would provide an estimated, after total build-out, about 50 additional customers to the sanitation district using those funds with that extension. The other extension that we've looked at and we're recommending is an extension south of along Highway 641 to get basically from the school property there across the creek all the way to Bryansburg Road intersection down there. There's, as you know, there's significant number of commercial businesses along that corridor, some residential, and then also the bus garage, which the school is currently under construction on down there at the intersection with Bryansburg Road. We've got estimates that we've put together for that, and we've looked at some preliminary alignments through those corridors. So the next step would be to get court approval to move forward to basically earmark those contingency dollars for performing the engineering services needed in environmental permitting to open up for the construction of those lines within this current contract using the KIA loan monies.
Let me make sure I understand. Is this a either or as far as the first part that you mentioned and then the second part, or is that both? These contingencies would take care of both of those. So it'd go down to Bryansburg Road.
We've got estimates put together on them, and they haven't been designed, and we've put together engineering estimates based on rural development percentages.
Yeah.
We haven't put together a formal manner estimate. As of right now, the dollars that we have estimated for the two projects do exceed the $530,500, but that's, again, kind of like the loan that we got right now. That is subject change. We've got over $100,000 in contingencies with those two estimates that we've put together. So there's quite a bit of play between the estimates and the total contingency amount at this time.
For the sewer expansion or extension for Sycamore Creek and the trailer park, one of the advantages in that project is you'll be taking out a failing treatment plant and potentially the lagoon system that is there. So with Department of Water, they like that because we're taking out two systems and putting these residents on a utility. So anytime we can take out a package treatment plant that's failing and a lagoon system, the Department of Water tends to like that. But the other benefit is that the district picks up those additional customers. So it falls in with their revenue, trying to get increased revenue. And that was probably identified by the district as one of their primary, if there was any one of these projects that get done, that would be a primary extension for them. I would also add that there's, in my opinion, and I would probably think it's consistent that there's got to be contingencies on the other project.
Yes,
The other project, there's some landowners that are actually wanting the sewer extension to come up further on 641.
Further than what he's talking about? Further than Bryansburg Road?
All the way up to
City limits?
the old Pepsi plant. No.
Yeah, that's what, okay, so that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's
all the way up to,
that's
Bryansburg Road, yeah.
south along US
Scale.
641 Brownsburg Road.
Okay.
Yeah, that particular one, I would think that there would have to be some contingencies that would have to be met. Those landowners that want that they would have to participate in some capacity. That's just my opinion. That's probably the largest one out of the two. And without going into the details, y'all have the approximate costs, but I would definitely say that there'd have to be some contingencies to where those landowners participate so that we have skin in the game from them, because they're going to be benefiting from this extension. That's my opinion on it. If we were to make a decision on this, the timeline as far as the extensions with these
Would you like me
two.
to talk about that?
Yeah, if the court was to move on this, what's the timeline look for since it is with KIA?
Okay. And that's one of the reasons for the timing of this proposal, so to speak, recommendation right now. Through the KIA loan process, any additions that we make to the current design scope of work will have to go through environmental permitting review again through the state and then federal levels. So similar to the project that's currently being built, this project will need to be designed, easements will have to be secured, and then we'll have to get approval from the Fish and Wildlife Corps of Engineers, the NRCS, and the Archaeological Historical Society for the project. Based on the last that we made to the project, the environmental permitting side of it is about a 2-month process. So we feel like starting this process now would allow us to get that design done and then add in 2 months of review time from an environmental standpoint. We estimate, we feel pretty confident that we can get this thing approved while the contractor's still out here and still has equipment on the project site in mid-April. We would have to fast track a little bit of our design and surveying phases to get that done, but I feel like we could do that and you wouldn't risk the contractor moving off-site and then having to pay remobilization costs to get them back out there. And we've had some preliminary discussions with the contractor, and they don't have any issues at this time holding their unit prices that were bid for the project. They said material prices are holding pretty steady for them, and they wouldn't be interested in upping their rates or their unit prices at this time for the extensions.
And while I'm thinking about it, Jason, if we were to have contingencies built in, could we have those landowners sign an agreement as far as their participation? I mean, what could the court do as far as having them commit to this project?
Yeah, we can approach them and
Have them sign an agreement and, okay.
Each one, or are you just talking the commercial?
The commercial, yeah.
Okay, so there's, and I mean,
'Cause it's
honestly,
really-
there's
that's-
probably 2 maybe, I don't even know if there's 2 residential down. Yeah, maybe there is. That would pick up. It would only pick up a couple of
There's a
actual
couple.
residential.
We are following some of the backlot lines with our preliminary alignment to follow the creek, so we won't be right along Highway 641. Due to the topography, we'll be following the creek along the west side, or excuse me, the east side of 641. So we'll be behind some of those houses that front 641 in that corridor. And once we get up there past the brew house, get a little,
Yeah.
right the roadway that intersects from the east, once we get past the intersection, we plan to jump over to the west side in those open ag fields and then head down south towards the bus garage from that location.
Yeah, so there's some requests from the commercial side for this extension.
There is request.
Yeah,
Had some folks along there.
yeah. And that's, yeah. It's definitely one step closer. But I that's just my opinion. I think that those individuals would have to have some commitment.
Are there any other questions about the 2 alignments or the 2 scopes of work that are being presented? Do you need anything else from me, Judge?
No,
Other
this
recommendation?
particular project, I mean, we've got, just so that the court understands, we've got the school portion, which they've agreed to. I don't think the district has signed anything. I know we haven't seen anything as far as the school signing yet, but the school's participation, a portion of this, what was it, about 800,000?
Yes, sir.
Is what they're gonna be paying. So when you look at these numbers, keep in mind that the school's portion is about 800,000 that they're gonna be paying. So that'll be eventually a check written, to the fiscal court, in the future. I don't know if we have a timeline on their,
I'm not aware of a firm timeline on that.
That's right.
My assumption would be before they make a connection to the new sewer line that's been installed on their property, that payment would be made to the fiscal court for the project. So I'm anticipating that being, this summer, while
Okay.
school's out of session.
so that lets you see the bigger picture as far as the project. Is there any other questions? And the contingencies on this, if the contingencies aren't met, then we don't do the project. So that's why I'd like to see some contingencies put on it. I think it's great that we've got the commercial side that wants to develop, but we are kind of going out further than originally planned. I know it was a master plan about years ago, but if it's going to be potentially developing, some land, creating jobs, I'm all about that, but I definitely would like to see some contingencies on these projects from the commercial side. I don't know if we can get that specific, but apparently it sounds like we can, to have them sign a contract.
And just for information, we have discussed with the sanitation district, and they've got a public meeting scheduled for next Monday, where they're going to invite all the property owners and landowners along Highway 641 through this corridor from the creek back to Bryansburg Road. They're going to invite those property owners to their next meeting this coming Monday, just so they can have an informative session with them, make them aware of this proposal and this proposed project or recommended project.
How do they invite those, just out of curiosity? Are they
Based
sending
on
letters to?
Based on discussions as of yesterday, I think they're going to go door to door and just let everybody know, rather than waiting on the mail. They're going to go just physically, face to face, let them know about the meeting and request their attendance there.
And some of the commercial, I'd say developers have already reached out to the district, but they want to be formal and notify everybody as far as the discussions that we're having and doing the extensions. So
So, I mean,
the interest is already
do
there.
do they need to know some type of figure or there's no way that we can give them that by Monday, right? For their participation that you're talking about?
There's been some figures thrown out. The district more or less had those discussions. But there have been some figures that have been discussed.
But they're not, are they comfortable enough are they gonna make that?
With my
Suggestion that
my
night?
understanding, based on those discussions, the landowners actually approached the district with a figure. The district did not approach the
Correct.
landowner with a figure.
Like individual figures for them to?
Yeah.
Correct.
I think the
Yeah.
individuals were comparing their cost for sanitation on developable properties versus, what they would use in lieu of in participation for this project.
That's why I would think that the contingencies are important. If those who have reached out to the district are committing dollars, then we need to have that in writing before we move forward and actually executing on this project. We can go ahead today because that's why we've got it presented, that we can discuss it and even take action. It is a project with KIA. We already got the contractor on the ground doing the work. And it's an extension within the project. Obviously, the permits that Chad talked about. There's time to get that done, but 2 weeks or next week, did they say? They were going to meet.
Next week.
Next week, they're going to
11th.
meet. If those contingencies aren't met, then it's off the table, in my opinion.
And when you when you say the trailer park, which, I mean, I consider the trailer park the one at the top of the hill. Is that what
Yes.
we're talking
Yes.
about? Okay,
Yeah.
we're not talking about the Smith's property. That was
The
already.
sewer will go through
in.
Smith's property.
Okay.
The way it's proposed, it would go
Yeah.
through that property and then to the back of that, south end of that property to pick up where that package plant is.
Okay.
About 2/3 of the way back from 641, there's a small package plant back
Okay.
there on the north side of the trailer park.
Okay.
But as far as these two extensions, if we would take action today to move forward with the extensions with contingencies, next week when they meet, we'll know if the parties are going to participate. But that's what we can do, so that if they do participate, then it gives the engineers time to go ahead and start their process and getting the permits required. So today, that's why we've got this on the agenda, is to discuss it, and if we move forward, to take action.
What's our timeline with the work coming due, with bills coming due, as far as rolling this into the possible bond or?
This one is separate.
Right, okay, so that would not be included in the bond?
No.
Okay. What funds are we gonna use to pay for it?
Well, we won't know until the bids.
Okay,
And we've identified some funds, but
Okay.
until the bids, until we
Right.
have the approximate numbers.
okay,
I think we estimate on these two, it's about 200,000 more than the contingency dollars, but there is some, what Chad was talking about, and there are some contingency dollars built in to each one of these.
mhm.
So we won't know those exact dollars until the bids come in.
So will this be able to be a part of the KIA existing? Could we merge that into the existing project
The existing project.
for that debt, for the draws?
Well, we've got monies that we can pull from. We talked about the 800,000 that
Yeah,
we're
from
gonna be
the
getting
school.
from the school.
Mhm.
Yeah,
The way that would work,
Yeah.
if the KIA and if everything was designed and approved by the KIA and Division of Water, and they would allow this work to be added to the current contract, they would pay up to the current loan amount, and
Okay.
then there would be what they call a local match
Yes,
to provide the additional
Okay.
funds if it did go over the existing loan amount.
okay. I was just trying to keep an idea of cash flow.
Yeah, so the loan amount wouldn't change. It would just have to be some kind of
Correct.
local monies
Mhm.
added to the project.
Okay.
Anybody else got any questions?
I mean, I'm for the extension. I'm just a little unsure as far as how to make the motion with this contingency, not knowing, I mean, I assume, it sounds like what you're needing from us is approval to put those bids out there, or what's it?
Right, so the action, and this is a great question. Actions on these two items would be, a motion would be in the form of to move forward on approving the two presented expansions with contingencies that those landowners who have committed verbally certain amount of monies, that they participate. And that we get a contract drafted by council that those landowners sign. If that doesn't happen, then obviously the deal's off the table.
It's all subject to this court being satisfied that the
Well, I move that we approve those 2 extensions then with the contingencies on that participation from landowners.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
I'll keep you posted on the meeting and just keep you abreast of everything that happens on next Monday's meeting, and then we can coordinate from that point in time
Okay,
the next step.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
I just noticed the time. We have some representatives here that we have to go in executive session. So we need a motion to go into executive session for litigation.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Coming out of executive session, one item that we will need action on, and that is going to be to give the treasurer authorization to sign a filing fee for the building inspectors.
So move.
Second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Should have a copy of Josh Tubbs's resignation letter. I'll just go ahead and read this. This is addressed to the chairman of the Marsh County Calvert River Port Authority. And dear Ms. Begazchik, please accept this letter of resignation from me in regard to my board of directors position on the Marsh County Calvert City Riverport Authority Board. Likewise, I will finish my administrative duties for the Port Authority as of June 30th, 2019. It has been an honor to work with the board over the last several years to try to find creative ways to realize a large and long-anticipated port development in Calvert City, Kentucky. It has occurred to me over the last couple of years that with limited resources, this realization will likely not occur, and I am confident in saying that. As an authority, we have explored every possible avenue to make it possible. I look forward to being of service to the community through our new and aggressive economic development efforts at Kentucky Lake Economic Development, and have found with new assets and programming, my workload and the opportunity for our community have increased tremendously. I look forward to focusing on the tangible projects that are ahead of us. With that said, I will be working closely with Captain Hollinger to make sure that his private port development and real estate are a part of our marketing strategy initiative at KLED. Though I am resigning my board position, I would encourage the authority to consider dissolving and sharing its resources with Calvert City and Marsh County Fiscal Court. While the existing resources are limited, they may be of valued assets or assistance to the City Council and Fiscal Court and community and economic development efforts. Again, I thank you for your confidence and leadership to our community. Sincere regards, Josh Tubbs. That was dated January 15th. And this is a resignation letter from Tim Vaughn. Dear Judge Neal, please accept this letter of resignation from the Marsh County Calvert City Riverport Authority. I have enjoyed serving in this capacity. However, due to expanded business responsibilities, I am no longer capable of fulfilling my obligations to the board. Thank you for the opportunity to serve on the board, and please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions. Sincerely, Tim Vaughn. So with the vacance of Josh, his term is not, that position on the board is not up until, I believe, June. So I've got a replacement for his position, which is Jim Hogan, to replace Josh and finish out his current term. And Tim Vaughn, his resignation, I've got a replacement, which is Brad Warning, to replace Tim Vaughn. If you look at the bylaws, and I think I submitted a copy of that for your review, the Riverport bylaws states that the judge executive can appoint himself or a fiscal court member, and Bob Gold was that appointee So after the elections, Bob's position, or actually in January, Bob's position is no longer holding as a fiscal court appointee. So I am appointing myself to the Riverport Board to take the fiscal court appointment. So those are the three appointments that will be for the Riverport Board. And I think later on we're going to be scheduling a meeting. Should have a letter that we were requested by the Riverport Board Chair to do a joint special call meeting February 11th at 9 a.m. Here at the Fiscal Court. It was a request to Marshall County and Calvert City to attend. Is everybody available to attend February 11th at 9 a.m.?
Yes.
Then we'll go ahead and schedule that for a special call meeting February 11th at 9 a.m. with the Marshall County Calvert City Riverport Authority. We also have a presentation that's going to be given by Enterprise to the Fiscal Court. And that would be a special call meeting on February 12th at 1 p.m.
Can I call in? I'll be in Lexington.
You'll be in Lexington?
Meetings. Mm-hmm.
Is that week, that same week?
It is, but mine.
You're there
I
before.
have KYR Realtor meetings before our county commissioner.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, and I think the requirement on that, Jason, is we got to have location and to meet the statutory requirement for calling
Well,
in.
For just a call-in, you can't,
Well,
you
this-
can't just call in. I mean, if you want to be a participant in the proceeding, you have to Skype in. So we have to be
Okay.
able to see you, you have to be able to see us. Now, you can call in and listen in on what's going on, but you can't vote or make any motions. So you would just be a bystander,
I mean,
basically.
I can Skype in. I'll just
Yeah, if you
leave
can-
the
yeah.
meeting if
Well,
you need me to.
This meeting, we're not going to be doing any action items. So this is more or less a presentation from Enterprise. So there won't be any action items.
If there's not any action to be taken, then I would suggest you just call in. We put you on speakerphone.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we can do that. It's more or less,
Informational.
yeah, they're going to give a presentation. I would say any action items will be in a fiscal court meeting.
All right, so that's
That'll be
1 o'clock, so 2 o'clock Lexington.
February 12th at 1 p.m. And worst case, Monty, if the presentation, I believe we're going to have Denise here recording it, so in the material, we can get you a copy of it if for some reason you get tied up and can't call in, so.
Fine, I'll look at that.
Under correspondence, the City County Industrial Development Authority, Brad is an appointment on that board, and I reappointed him. This is a interlocal agreement that the city, Benton, and county have on the Industrial Authority Board, and there's 3 appointments that the judge executive appoints, and Brad's an appointment. His term is up, so pursuant to KRS 241-110, I hereby reappoint Brad. Brad, this is the official letter. Reappoint Brad Warning to the City County Industrial Development Authority. If you need further information, please contact my office at the number below. So he was reappointed to the City County IDA Board. Did y'all get the correspondence on, well, the installer meeting, the Friends of Chestnut Creek, this is involving the 319H funds with the sanitation project in Draftonville. They are going to have a meeting scheduled at the Board of Health, at the Health Department, here in the next week or two. They're trying to work out those details. Casey couldn't get me the location details nailed down, but I wanted to at least let you know, and also let the public know that the installer meeting for the Chestnut Creek 319 funds is more so for plumbers, so that they can show up to the meeting, and Casey is going to be the representative to educate them on the process with those 319H funds. So today, it's more of just a update you. I hope to have a date, time, location from Casey. And as soon as we get that, we'll put that out on our Facebook and webpage so that the licensed plumbers in the areas will be notified to show up to that meeting.
Do they have to get on a list? Will there be an approved list that you're required to use?
They will definitely need the training. I don't think there's going to be a list per se, but if they don't get the informational training from the Friends of Chestnut Creek, then they may not be
Approved.
aware of the process, because it's going to be a process laid out.
Because the residents are the ones who actually get those.
The plumber.
So we really can't control necessarily who is and isn't on that list, I guess, right?
Well, Casey and them are handling that portion of it.
Okay.
As far as those 319H funds, there's educational classes that they have to do for landowners and businesses, even the plumbers. They want to make sure that they fill them in on the process, because if they don't follow the process, they're not going to get paid. So it's very important that they understand that there's no list, but they definitely want to be involved from the beginning. So as soon as we get that information, we're going to put that out. I don't know what the holdup. It's not on us. We're waiting on them to figure that out. All right, moving on to old business. Approve the minutes, January 15th meeting, January 23rd special call meeting, and the January 28th budget workshop.
Make that motion, Judge.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we will schedule another meeting to follow up. I know we were short on the budget workshop, but we will do that once, probably late February, once we get back from everything that we got going on. Let's see. This is a draft. I just put it in here for your review. This is the memorandum, interlocal agreement with the city, the Marsh County IDA, Benton City, and the Marsh County IDA and the Fiscal Court. So that's just for your review. Jason's working that. This is his draft. If you have any questions, just reach out to Jason and I, but this is really just for your review.
Did y'all all get a copy of that?
Yes.
Did you send them the copy with the highlighted revisions in it? Is that right?
Yours,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so the original came from Zach, and then I made the revisions. I sent it to Judge. I sent it back to Zach with my revisions. Zach said that it looked good to him with the revisions. So I think we've got at least an agreement in principle on the interlocal agreement. What I'd suggest we go ahead and do is send that to DLG for them to get their approval.
Does that need action?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, if nobody has any questions on this, then we would move on to accept this interlocal agreement.
Or just move to submit it for review and approval.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Motion to submit it to
DLG.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to new business. Change order contingency dollars, we already talked about that. Extension of Draftonville, we already did that. Surplus items. Do we have a list of the surplus items? They have a copy of it. And I think we just need approval that we are going to surplus these items from the fiscal court, and then we will actually enter these items into county surplus, and then we will start the process of surplusing these.
How many do we have?
What was that, maybe 30? Is there a quantity? Yeah. Some of these, it looks like some of these are going to be on gov deals. You want to take a look at it?
Well, we just need, just for the record, we just need to go through and say what the items are and why they're no longer needed and why they're being surplused.
Okay. Let's see, well. Probably not going to be able to accomplish that today, because it's listed on here, but it doesn't state anything on here why we're surplusing them. Unless we've got Brad put that. We'll table this until next meeting, because it doesn't state why we don't need some of those items. So we can do that next meeting. All right, the Park Foundation account. We need a motion to remove Dennis Faust and add Brittany Heath.
So moved, Judge.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ordinance 2019-01, Compass Municipal Advisors, first reading. You got a copy of that, Jason?
I haven't, I only got an email, I don't have a hard copy.
You got to read the whole thing for the first reading.
All right, buckle your seatbelt. Ordinance number 2019-01, an ordinance of the Fiscal Court of Marshall County, Kentucky, authorizing and approving the issuance of Marshall County, Kentucky General Obligation Bond Series 2019 in a principal amount not to exceed $9,200,000. The bonds authorizing the levy of a direct annual tax on all taxable property within the county, in addition to all other taxes, in an amount sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on the bonds to the extent that facility revenues are not sufficient, and authorizing the taking of all other actions, including the execution and delivery of continuing disclosure agreement and such other documents, agreements, and certificates necessary or required for the issuance of the bonds. Whereas County of Marshall County, Kentucky, acting by and through the Fiscal Court, desires to finance improvements to sewer and water lines, industrial park infrastructure improvements, including but not limited to roads, turn lanes, and utilities, construction of a multi-use public facility owned and operated by the county and used for government purposes, the payment of capitalized and/or accrued interest, if any, and the payment of the cost of issuance. Whereas the county proposes to finance the project by issuing its general obligation bonds in one or more series, denominations, identifying name, and dated as determined by the county judge executive, with advice from the financial advisor, and a total principal amount not to exceed $9,200,000. Whereas in order to assure the payment of the bonds, it is necessary that the county authorize a levy of tax sufficient for the purposes provided herein. Now therefore be it ordained by the Fiscal Court of the County of Marshall, Commonwealth of Kentucky, as follows. Section 1. That the preamble of this ordinance is hereby incorporated within the body of this ordinance as fully as if copied in full hereat. I think that should be herein. Herein. That this ordinance shall constitute a contract between the county and the registered and beneficial owners of the bonds herein authorized, and no change, alteration, or amendment in the provisions hereof shall be made subsequent to the delivery of said bonds. For the purposes of this ordinance and the bonds, the capitalized term shall have the following meanings as set hereinafter set forth. Act means section 66011 through 66191 of KRS. Bond counsel means Gillard B. Johnson III, GBJ and Associates, PLLC, Nicholasville, Kentucky. Bond registrar or registrar means a depository acting in its capacity as registrar of the bonds and paying agent for the bonds and assuming the obligations of a registrar as set forth in this ordinance. Code means the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended in the regulations promulgated thereunder. Cost means all costs incident to financing the project, including but not limited to the expenses of financing, the cost of insurance, expenses incident to the issuance of the bonds. Cost of issuance means those expenses incident to the issuance of the bonds, including but not limited to the fees of any rating agency, financial advisor, bond and/or tax counsel, bond registrar, and paying agent, publication costs, and any other costs associated with the issuance and delivery of the bonds. Cost of issuance fund means the separate account established with the depository from the proceeds of the bonds from which the cost of issuance are to be paid. Depository means such a bank as may be appointed by the county judge executive without further action of the fiscal court, who may also act as bond registrar and paying agent for the bonds, and depository for the various funds established by this ordinance. Facility or facilities means the infrastructure and improvements in buildings financed with the proceeds from the sale of bonds owned and used by the county with a useful life greater than 1 year and for a public purpose. Facility revenue or facility revenues means any proceeds from the operation of the facility or facilities. Final official statement means the county's information disclosed statement issued pursuant to Securities Exchange Rule 15C2-12, the rule in connection with offering and sale of the bonds and deemed final within the meaning of the rule. Financial advisor means Compass Municipal Advisors, LLC, Lexington, Kentucky. Governing body means the fiscal court of the county. Investments means those investments permitted under section 66.480 of the Kentucky Revised Statutes. Issuer or county means the county of Marshall County, Kentucky. Paying agent means the bond register assuming the obligations of a paying agent as set forth in this ordinance. Pledged receipts means facility or facilities revenue, the revenues from the county, and or the tax to the extent required adequate each year to pay the principal and interest requirements of the bonds. Project means the financing of improvements to sewer and water lines, industrial park infrastructure improvements, including but not limited to roads, turn lanes, and utilities, construction of a multi-use public facility owned and operated by the county and used for government purposes, the payment of capitalized and or accrued interest, if any, and the payment of the cost of issuance. Registered owners or bond owner or owner means when used with reference to the bonds, the registered owner of any bonds. Revenues means any proceeds from the county's general fund or any proceeds received by the county which may be used to pay principal and interest on the bonds. State means the Commonwealth of Kentucky. State local debt officers shall have the same meaning as set forth in 66011, section 24 of KRS. Tax means the direct ad valorem tax on all property within the county of Marshall, Kentucky, which is subject to taxation for county purposes, occupational license fees, and any and all other receipts of taxes, excises, utilities, and service revenues, permits, licenses, fees, fines, or other sources of revenue or of revenue distributions to the county. Section 2. For purposes set forth in the preamble of this ordinance, there is hereby declared a necessity for, and there is hereby authorized to be issued pursuant to this act, a principal amount not to exceed a total of $9,200,000 as authorized by this ordinance to the Marshall County, Kentucky General Obligation Funds, Series 2019, and one or more series, denominations, other identifying name, and dated as determined by the county judge executive with the advice from the financial advisor without further action of the fiscal court. Bond shall be dated as determined by the winning bid set forth in the official bid form and selected by the county judge executive without further action of the fiscal court and with the advice of the financial advisor pursuant to section 6 of this ordinance, awarding bonds to the purchaser thereof and establishing the interest rate or rates on the bonds. Principal on the bonds shall be payable at maturity. Interest on the bond shall be payable semi-annually as at the stated interest rate or rates on the outstanding principal amount thereof. The bonds may be serial and or term bonds maturing in the years and in the amounts to be established in the official bid form accepted by the county judge executive as a successful bid for the purchase of the bonds after advertised competitive bid sale of the bonds based on the interest rates bid in the successful bid and the provisions of this ordinance, specifically this section 2, provided that the final maturity date of the bonds shall be set forth in the official bid form accepted by the county judge executive as the successful bid for the purchase of the bonds, and such final maturity may not exceed the maximum maturity as established in section 66091 of KRS, and further provided that the aggregate net interest cost of the bonds shall not exceed 9% per annum. Bond shall be, section 3. The bond shall be issued in book entry only form unless the successful bidder elects to issue standard bond certificates and shall be substantially in the same form as that attached to this ordinance Exhibit A, except as amounts and dates may be changed therein, the redemption provisions of which are incorporated herein by reference thereto. The bond shall be executed with the facsimile signature of the county judge executive, attested by the facsimile signature of the fiscal court clerk, and may be imprinted with the facsimile of the corporate seal of the county. The bond shall be payable at the principal office of the depository, being such bank as may be appointed by the county judge executive without further action of the fiscal court, who may also act as bond registrar and paying agent for the bonds and depository for the various funds established by this ordinance. No bonds should be valid or binding upon the county unless and until authenticated by the manual signature of a duly authorized representative of the registrar and paying agent. Any optional redemption provision shall be set forth in the final bond certificate and/or the final official statement or similar disclosure document or memorandum, which provisions are incorporated herein without further action of the fiscal court. In the event the purchaser of the bonds so elects, the bonds may be issued as term bonds, in which event the paying agent shall select a principal maturity originally scheduled to mature on the principal due date as reflected by the successful bid, and shall notify the registered owners of bonds so selected for mandatory redemption not less than 30 days prior to the principal due date by regular United States mail. Any mandatory sinking fund redemption provision shall be set forth in the final bond certificate and/or the final official statement or similar disclosure document or memorandum, which provisions are incorporated herein without further action of fiscal court. If less than all bonds which are payable by their terms on the same date are to be called, the particular bonds or portions of bonds payable on such same date and to be redeemed from such series shall be selected by lot by the registrar and paying agent in such manner as the registrar and paying agent in its discretion may determine, provided, however, that the portion of any bond to be redeemed shall be in the principal amount of $5,000 or some multiple thereof. And then in selecting bonds for redemption, the registrar and paying agent shall treat each bond as representing that number of bonds which is obtained by dividing the principal amount of the such bond by $5,000. At least 30 days before the redemption of any bonds, the registrar and paying agent shall cause a notice of such redemption to be mailed, postage prepaid to all registered owners of the bonds to be redeemed at their address as they appear on the registration books kept by the registrar and paying agent. But failure to mail such notice shall not affect the validity of the proceedings for such redemption. Each such notice shall set forth the date affixed for the redemption price to be paid, and if less than all the bonds being payable by their terms on a single date, then outstanding shall be called for redemption, the distinctive numbers or letters, if any, of such bonds shall be redeemed. In the case of bonds to be redeemed in part only, the portion of the principal amount thereof to be redeemed. In case any bond is to be redeemed in part only, the notice of redemption which relates to such bonds shall state also that on or before the redemption date, upon surrender of such bonds, a new bond in principal amount equal to the unredeemed portion of the bonds shall be issued. On the date so designated for redemption, notice having been sent in the manner and under the conditions here and above provided, and monies of payment of the redemption price being held in separate accounts by the bond register paying agent for the bond owners or portions thereof to be redeemed, the bonds or portions of bonds so called for redemption shall become and be due and payable at the redemption price provided for redemption of such bonds or portions of bonds on such date. Interest on the bonds or portions of the bonds so called for redemption shall cease to accrue, and the bond owners, registered owners of such bonds or portions of bonds shall have no rights in respect thereof except to receive payment of the redemption price thereof and to receive bonds for any unredeemed portions of bonds. In case part but not all of an outstanding bond shall be selected for redemption, the registered owner thereof or his attorney or legal representative shall present and surrender such bond to the bond registrar paying agent for payment of the principal amount hereof so called for redemption, and the county shall execute, and the bond registrar paying agent shall authenticate and deliver to or upon the order of such registered owner or his legal representative without charge therefore for the unredeemed portion of the principal amount of the bond so surrendered, a bond of the same series and maturity and bearing interest at the same rate. With respect to any notice of optional redemption of the bonds, unless at some such time such notice is given, the bonds to be redeemed shall be deemed to have been paid. Such notice shall state that such redemption is conditional upon receipt by the bond register paying agent on or prior to the date fixed for such redemption of monies that, together with other available monies held by the bond register paying agent, are sufficient to pay the redemption note price of and accrued interest on the bonds to be redeemed. And if such money shall not have been so received, said notice shall be of no force and effect, and the county shall not be required to redeem such bonds. In the event of a notice of redemption of the bonds contained such as the conditions and such monies are not so received, the redemption of the bonds as described in the conditional notice of redemption shall not be made, and their bond register paying agent shall, within a reasonable time after the date on which such redemption was to occur, give notice to the respective owners of the bonds designated for the redemption in the manner in which the notice of redemption was given, that such monies were not so received, and that there shall be no redemption of the bonds pursuant to such notice of redemption. Section 4. That the debt, let me see here. That the debt presented by the bonds is hereby determined to be within the maximum indebtedness of the county permitted under Section 158 of the Constitution. That the county is authorized to contract the indebtedness represented by the bonds pursuant to Section 159 of the Constitution of Kentucky and provide for the collection of an annual tax sufficient to pay the interest on said bonds, and establish the hereinafter identified sinking fund to provide for the payment of the principal thereof. Pursuant to Section 157 of the Constitution and Section 66-111 of the KRS, there is hereby authorized to be levied in the county hereby covenants to so levy and collect each year that the bonds remain outstanding a tax in amount sufficient to pay for the full payment of the principal and interest requirements on said bonds. That by the adoption of this ordinance, the county covenants with the owners of the bonds that it shall levy each year a tax in sufficient amount and appropriate in its annual budget, together with other monies available to it, to the extent facility or facilities revenues are not sufficient, an amount of funds sufficient to pay the debt charges on the bonds defined in section 66011, section 4 of the KRS. That the tax shall include the ad valorem property taxes permitted under section 157 of the Constitution of Kentucky, occupational license fees, excises, and any other receipts from taxes, excises, utilities, and service revenues, permits, licenses, fines, or other sources of revenue, or of revenue distributions to the county. If there is hereby pledged to the payment of the bonds, revenues, facility, or facilities revenues, and/or the tax to the extent required each year, which together shall constitute the pledged receipts securing said bonds in accordance with the terms of this ordinance. That the county hereby declares, determines, and certifies that the project constitutes a public project within the meaning of section 66011, section 17 of KRS. That the county covenants to levy, collect, and segregate the tax to meet the current annual debt service requirements of the bonds, and hereby designates the bonds as full general obligations of the county, to the payment of which the full faith and credit, revenue, and taxing authority of the county are hereby pledged for the prompt payment thereof. That the revenues, facility, or facilities revenues and/or tax to the extent required shall, as received, be deposited in the appropriate sinking fund for the bonds and applied solely to the payment of the principal and interest requirements of and administrative expenses for the board. Section 5 deals with, let me read this, see if I can skip some of this. Section 5, in summary, says the bond shall only be issued to the extent approved by a decision of the state local debt officer, and the judge executive is hereby directed to cause to be filed a notice of intent to finance or petition with the state local debt officer. Section 6 deals with the employment of a financial advisor and bond counsel and advertised sale of the bonds. That should be pretty self-sufficient. Section 7, establishment of funds. That they're hereby authorized to be established following funds or accounts which shall be maintained with the depository. The sinking fund or bond fund which shall receive the receipts of the tax and revenues herein authorized to the extent required for the bonds and pledged receipts. Said sinking fund money shall be used only for the payment of the principal and interest requirements of the bonds. Upon delivery of the bonds, the accrued interest, if any, shall be deposited in said fund. Cost of issuance of fund which shall receive proceeds from the bonds, the amounts necessary to pay the cost of issuance of the bonds upon delivery of said bonds. The depository shall remit the required payments in the amounts and to the parties specified in writing by the county judge executive or county treasurer or such other county official as may be designated by the county upon delivery of the bonds. Any amounts remaining in the cost of issuance fund following the payment of all such costs of issuance shall be transferred to the sinking fund. Project fund or construction fund which shall receive a portion of the proceeds from the issuance of the bonds, which shall be used to pay the costs and expenses associated with the acquisition, development, and construction of the facilities or facilities as specified in writing by the county judge executive or such other county official as may be designated by the county. Any other fund authorized by this ordinance required by law or deemed necessary and appropriate by the financial advisor. Monies on deposit in the funds enumerated in subsections A through D of this section shall be invested in the investments permitted and any earnings carried to the credit of the fund from which the investment was made. Section 8 deals with, let's see if I can skip this here. Section 8 deals with the deposit of the bonds and the duties of the registrar, paying agent, and the depository institution. So I think we can skip that. Section 9, tax covenants. The county shall at all times do and perform all acts and things required and permitted by law and necessary or desirable in order to assure that the interest paid by the county on the bonds shall be excludable from the gross income of the recipients thereof for federal income taxes purposes under any provisions of this code, the IRS code. The county shall not permit at any time or times any of the proceeds of the bonds to be used directly or indirectly to acquire any securities or obligations of the acquisition of which would cause the such bonds to be arbitrage bonds as defined in section 148 of the code as then in effect. County further covenants that prior to the issuance of said bonds and that as a condition precedent to such issuance, the county shall certify by issuance of a certificate of the county judge executive or county treasurer or such other county official as may be designated by the county supplemental to this ordinance that on the basis of the facts, estimates, and circumstances in existence on the date of issue of said bonds, it is not expected that the proceeds of said bonds will be used in a manner which would cause such obligations to be arbitrage bonds under the code. County shall execute a tax certificate, an agreement, or similar document relating to the proceeds of the bonds in compliance with certain requirements of the code to be dated the date of delivery of the bonds, the tax certificate. The county further covenants to comply with all representations, covenants, and assurances contained in the tax certificate, which tax certificate shall constitute a part of the contract between the county and the registered owners of the bonds. Section 10 deals with the it just says that the ordinance shall constitute a contract between the county and all who may become registered owners of the bonds. So it establishes the contract. County Judge, Executive, Fiscal Court are hereby authorized to execute a continuing disclosure agreement in order to comply with Rule 15C2, Section 2 of the Securities and Exchange Commission in connection with the bonds. Section 11, the governing body, by the adoption of this ordinance, reasonably anticipates that the total principal amount of qualified tax exempt obligations which it will issue during the calendar year ending December 31, 2019 will not exceed $10 million, and therefore designates the bonds as qualified tax exempt obligations within the meaning of Section 265B3 of the Code. Section 12 deals with severability of this ordinance. Section 13 deals with conflicts with other ordinances. Section 14 deals with disclosures, undertaking procedures. And that's it.
You'll note that obviously the first reading of an ordinance, there's no action, it's just the first reading, but you'll note that the bond ordinance reads not to exceed $9,200,000. The purpose of that amount being more is for consideration of the cost of the transactions. The fact that the project costs are estimated, so should the cost come in higher once bid, then that amount will cover those costs, because if we didn't, then we would have to resubmit to DLG, which is time-consuming. The petition to DLG is the next step to initiate that process, so it has to be approved by DLG. Benton, last council meeting, they basically approved that they would participate in the Interceptor project. So getting those steps taken, the next step is to get a reading conducted, first reading of the ordinance, get the petition to DLG submitted. This does not obligate us to anything. This is just a time factor of getting these steps in place. Obviously, that amount, like I said, was put in there for because these are suggested amounts that have been discussed.
And I know that there was a lot of discussion in that ordinance about levying a tax. This is not a new tax. This is correct. This is just existing taxes. There's nothing new being done.
Right. Any questions? Let's see. Next on the agenda, committees. One of the things that has been discussed, I know I've had a lot of people come to my office involving the animal complaints. That's probably outside of roads. Animal complaints is, I'm sure you guys get the same already phone calls about roads and animal complaints. But I think we're at that point where we need to start putting committees in place and the commissioners participating in these committees. And animal control is just one. There are some folks that want to be involved. I know that there is an animal control ordinance that had been drafted years ago to use as kind of like a shell to sit down and discuss that. But I wanted to start putting some committees in place. I know Asian Carp Committee, I know Judge White across the lake he's already has been well out in front of that. But I think putting a committee in place, I know Kevin has talked to me about that, to where we can participate and stay involved in that as well. And I've got on here, this in no means limits us to just these types of committees. We can have committees for several different things. But interlocal agreements, I know we foresee interlocal agreements in the future, and I think a committee sitting down, because some of those agreements will have an effect to our budget, and sitting down with the treasurer and looking at interlocal agreements, how they would affect our budget. So I think that's important too, so. Animal control, do either one of y'all, anybody interested in sitting on the animal control, committee? We've,
Yeah, yes.
somebody. And we're gonna identify the committee later, but I just wanna see who's a participant in this. Now, the Asian carp, I know, Kevin, you were adamant to be on that, so does anybody object to that Kevin would wanna sit on that? We formed a sewer committee, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago? And I think the sewer and water committee, I don't know if we were to combine that, or I don't know how the committees work, if we have to dissolve the committee that was formed for the sewer, and then if we combine water and sewer as a committee, so that if we have issues concerning sewer and water projects, that committee could sit down and discuss that.
Just as question as to what you're envisioning the committees to be, are you anticipating that, well, are you asking that these committees be more like a committee that would be an open meeting committee, or more along the lines of a working group, just to be able to handle things as they come along? Because there's a big difference between a working group and a committee, where a committee would have to be subject to open meetings, open records, and all those requirements.
Sure.
So.
Now, and that's a great question. I guess my question would be to where the commissioners sitting on committees, does it matter if it's a working committee or a workshop committee or a committee?
If the fiscal court creates a committee, then that committee is going to be a quasi-public entity. If you just assign certain people and people volunteer to sit on an advisory group, then that's a different thing.
So if we do that, commissioners being involved, because
As long as there's not a quorum.
Right.
They can sit on an advisory group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just the,
It's how it's
terminology,
created.
how it's
Yeah.
created.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then it would be more or less of an advisory group? So,
Now, the Asian carp, it sounds like that committee may have already been formed with other counties. Am I hearing that correctly?
Lyon County has a group. I don't know what their official formation is.
I know Randy has been intimately involved in it, so he'd be a great point person to ask.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're doing in Lyon County, but they do have a group, but I don't know if they've been officially formed out of the fiscal court. If we don't want to officially form a committee, because that would mean that you would have to have, like you said, the open meetings and open records, somebody would have to take the minutes and
Well,
everything.
if Lyon County's already got an Asian carp committee formed, I mean, you could just, if Kevin wants to be a part of that group, he could just be a liaison and just go to those meetings, because it's an open meeting, and just report back. Or they could allow him to be a part of the committee. Of course, that would be that committee's decision to let him be a part of it.
And what's our other option on that if we did something here also?
Well, forming our own.
Besides a committee though, without having the open records for the meetings and all that?
Just basically a
Advisory
association
group.
of people to get together and.
Now, as far as the commissioners, is there a statute that the commissioners are to, for a lack of better terms, because of their position and pay, they are to participate in committees or in advisory groups? Are you familiar with that? What I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I don't know it off the top of my head. Is that specific to committees, or is it non-specific?
Well, I mean, they can do either one. They can be on a committee or they can be on a advisory group. It's just a matter of how it's created.
Okay.
So as it relates to his, I would think he would just be, like you had mentioned, a liaison to I cannot imagine they don't have a current structure already set up.
Well, he can be a liaison and still have a local board because, I mean, we border the same lake.
Yeah.
But he can still have that group, advisory group. So, because I know I get phone calls, I'm sure you're getting phone calls, I don't know if y'all are getting phone calls, so that we can have our citizens that have concerns report to
To a specific
To a
commissioner
specific,
about
yeah.
that issue.
yes.
Okay.
But then he can still be a liaison to Lyon County. Because they're well out in front. I mean, they got Barkley Lake, whereas we got, Kentucky Lake, and then obviously they got Kentucky Lake as well, so.
So what you're saying is if we call this a working group, he's the main, I don't know what you'd call him as it wouldn't be a chair of the working group, but he will put that working group together, a committee together. And it,
Not a
because
committee,
it's
not a committee.
not a committee, but a group together. And same thing as far as I'm concerned as it relates to animal control.
Yes.
That is not a standing committee that is
Correct.
currently.
Correct. Now, as far as the sewer, I mean, back when Draftonville sewer was being discussed, we formed a committee. I mean, we've got that to where it is today. I really don't think we need that committee, but we can have an advisory group to review water and wastewater projects. I just throw that out there as an option if anybody's interested, because I know we've got.
When it comes to involving the cities, then, they just need to understand that this is a working group and that they can send us anyone they want to.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically, if you volunteered for the animal issue, then you're kind of like the fiscal court liaison. And you can work with whoever you want to.
Okay. All right. You need a motion?
No,
In that
we-
form?
we're,
No.
we'll
Okay.
identify, we'll get together and identify folks to be on that group. I know there's already some, with the animal control,
Right.
there's already
Yeah, it came
folks
up.
that, I've got a list, and I think Kevin, I know there's some folks that live in our county that are interested in that.
Yes.
But I just throw that out there. Interlocal agreements, I mean, I just throw that out there because I foresee we're gonna have some interlocal agreements in the near future, and I think that we need to discuss that in terms of how it's gonna affect our budget. So,
But just to be clear again on the structure, is that the fiscal court does not need to appoint specific individuals to work with the commissioners on those groups.
correct.
Yep. So there's no real fiscal court action. You're just saying that as for this issue, I'll be the liaison and can report back.
Anything,
My dog would be proud to know that.
and if you guys have any other, like if you get a bunch of phone calls and there's something that you feel needs to be looked at, I mean, we can do that.
They mention the word carp, it's automatic.
It's
Kevin
send them to Kevin.
Sprague's.
Yeah.
Yes. Whether it doesn't matter what kind of carp it is. Just fish in general. Just any fish.
Just any
No,
fish.
No, wait a minute.
And I don't know if you've noticed or not, but we are smack dab in the middle of skunk mating season.
Yes.
Yes,
So,
animal.
Yep.
Thank you.
Monty
Dogs.
Collins. Commissioner
Maybe
District.
somebody's dog gets sprayed.
Carp, maybe carp, yeah, maybe carp's not that bad of a.
Start running with me, you'll notice those things.
Well, there was no action taken, by the way, I'd like to.
all right. Board of Health appointment. Kip Mathis. The way this would work is the fiscal court can take action to approve Kip Mathis as a consumer position on the Board of Health. The Board of Health would also meet and take action as well. If both agree, then it would be submitted to, is it the secretary?
Yeah.
Who does the final approval?
The secretary, basically how the statute works is the secretary of the cabinet makes appointments from a list of nominees, and those are designated as 3 physicians, a vet, optometrist, and it just goes down the line. One's an engineer, and then one is a consumer. And then another one, the judge is automatically a member just as his position, and then the fiscal court appoints one. So Marty was the consumer appointed by the cabinet from a list of nominees, and he's resigning that position. So this is just a nomination, basically, of Kip Mathis to take his place as the consumer on that board.
Any questions on that? I mean, we would basically take action to approve Kip Mathis as the nominee, and then I would submit that to the Board of Health. I think our next meeting's probably we meet quarterly, so.
We can go ahead and, the cabinet will take nominees from basically any entity. So we can go ahead and submit Kip as a nominee, and then they may take action on it before the Board of Health meets. Board of Health, I think, will be okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. So we just need action on.
So moved.
appointment.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I put this on here. Typically, we bid our audit services. If the state auditor, they will send us a letter stating that they won't audit the fiscal court. So we did a bid, not 17, but I think 16, and Piercy and Gray was the only one that actually submitted. Then we did letters. We submitted letters. So I put this on here because Emily is submitting the letters to solicit the services to do our audits. What's important is, the timeline with the bond ordinance and the petition to DLG. One of the things that's going to be needed is our 17-year audit for our financials, and we haven't got that yet. So we're still waiting. The state auditor's office is behind, so we're still waiting on our audits from 17. So we're going to move forward on that. We're not per se going to do bids. It's just letting you know that the audit is, she submitted the letters out for how many, 6, 7? 7? You want to explain it? You can probably explain it better.
Since it's a professional service, it doesn't have to be bid. But in the past, what we've done is I've submitted to several, some local, some not local, within the state auditors, or CPA firms to do our audit. It doesn't have a timeline to get back to us necessarily, but we do need to be determining who is going to do our fiscal 18 year-end audit as soon as possible. The bids usually have a $10,000 to $12,000 swing in there. Some of the firms are just highly more expensive than others. But I think due to the length of time it's taken prior audit services, we wanted to open it back up to see what others might be interested in doing the audit.
So I think we're at that point. I mean, as soon as we get responses back, this is something that we need to start looking into to start getting our audits done quicker, because the state audit offices, it takes a while to get them back from the state, which potentially can affect us, and if DLG has to approve our budgets, and then we send it off to for having our financials reviewed. And I want to say that the letter we got from DLG, in some cases, it's like 3 months. Is that right? It's a lot- it's
Yeah,
very
it's 3
short.
months.
It's almost unobtainable to do that, especially when we're still waiting on 17-year audits. So we're going to get on this as soon as possible. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. East Marshall Fire Department audit report, June 30th, 2018. Should have a copy of it. We just need a motion to accept it.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Bryansburg Volunteer Fire Department audit report, June 30th, 2018. Motion to accept it.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Appropriations transfer.
I have a few transfers that I need to make. There's some within courthouse spending, just shuffling a little bit around $500 from remodeling to other expenses. I am moving funds from the grant fund into the general fund, and then it finally winds up in fiscal court capital projects. And economic development has a departmental transfer, and I am asking to move from reserves $8,000 to the sheriff's audit expense line item. They had 3, this is another issue with the audits. When they take so long, we get out of range in that we would expect 2 to be completed in 1 year. Well, this year we got 3, so it's under budgeted. So that's why I'm asking to move 8,000 into that.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and bring something else up I want to bring to everybody's attention. I'll have Emily give a better overview than me. The outgoing sheriff, obviously with the new sheriff, Sheriff McGuire's come in, and he's been handed a budget basically to deal with. I just think that it is important that we identify it now, that there were decisions made from the outgoing sheriff that affects the budget that he's been dealt with. So there is potential for some of the line items to be overage, that there may be overage, but Sheriff McGuire is aware of it. He's been working with Emily, and he has a plan to take action on it. But if you want to just give a better overview on it. What I don't want to happen is come June, it's a surprise, and the people in the community hear that, the sheriff's budget is already over the first 6 months of the year, and I'm not going to allow that. We're going to discuss that today, make you all aware of it, and we'll deal with it. I know Sheriff McGuire's dealing with it. But
Part of the reason why I'm asking to move that 8,000 from general fund to the sheriff's audit line item is that's a line item that you have no control over. But usually I wouldn't ask for that up front. I would ask the department to deal with it, and if it needs to happen later, do that. But there's already several obstacles due to the outgoing sheriff. There were a lot of vacation payouts that were within his policy that were allowable. However, they weren't budgeted for. So that's created increased payroll. Clerical staff made a lot of changes there. I believe the prior staff worked different hours and also took vacation time. So there was needed to be other staff there to take up some of that absence. So that created an overage within the clerical line item. And then the overtime, it was elevated already. So their payroll is about 20% higher overall than it should be at this point. And being as their payroll is a large part of their budget, that's why we felt like it was necessary to let you all know about that. Eddie has a good plan as to how to try to stay within that, and I think he's got a very good chance to do so. I'll be bringing forth a budget amendment in the next meeting or two, and that will amend in some of the school resource officer income. That's not accounted for in his budget. We had $100,000 that we have in general fund contingency for that, but that's only our portion. That's the portion that is for when they're not in session at school. So we've got to bring in the school reimbursement income into that line item. So he's got a good stumbling block that I feel like we can overcome. But in the event that we have another tragedy or something bad happens, we wanted to make you all aware of the situation.
Yeah, we're just one emergency away from not being able to make it, I think. And the problem mostly is that, we knew those school resource officers were coming in August. The fiscal year starts in July. They knew before then that they would be planning that, yet they didn't add that to that salary line. If they would have just added the $200,000 supplement that the school would pay out throughout the year, we get that money back through fees and it goes straight back to the fiscal court. But since they didn't raise that line, I've got 4 extra units, salaries that are coming out of that line. That line's $908,000, and it should look like, $1.15 million, really. And then that's where it is. I mean, we're at 75% or 74.22% right now, and we're really only one pay period over halfway. So that kind of shows you where we've only got $234,000 left in that line out of $908,000. So it's a big problem. We've overtime budgeted. We've got $52,000 left in what's called other overtime expenditures. We're going to try to run on 20 of that for the rest of the year. We've set a goal of running on 875 hours in 6 months, to where they used 2,200 hours the first 6 months. So. But we've hired people. We've got extra people there. Like I say, paying straight time is cheaper than paying overtime. So I'm not going to say we won't make it in July, but it's going to be very, very close.
And I felt it was important, when it was brought to my attention, I felt it was important that we brought it to the fiscal court's attention so that everybody understood this, so that if we do have to deal with something that may be a negative, it's not on it's on his shoulders to
It's on my shoulders now. I can feel it.
But those decisions were made before, and issues were made before. So regarding the budget appropriation transfer, is there any other questions? If not, we'd need a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Payment of the bill.
Motion to pay the bills, Judge.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. At this point, we can recess till 1 o'clock.
And just before we do that, just so the 2 audience members know, we did have a hearing set for 1. We are going to gavel in at that hearing as scheduled. But with agreement of counsel for Mr. Stokes, we are going to postpone the actual hearing until February the 19th at 1, because he could not be here today. So he had a conflict in his schedule. He's acquired counsel. So by agreement, we're going to continue that to 1. So feel free to be here at 1 if you want to. If you want to go ahead and take off, you can, because nothing's going to happen. So.
You need a motion to recess, sorry.
Yes, yes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. We'll go ahead and call the public hearing for removal of appointed member of special district governing body to order. Mr. Stokes' counsel has acknowledged that he can't be here, so we're going to schedule the meeting for public hearing for February 19th at 1 p.m. at 1 o'clock. So with no further business to conduct, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.